I sometimes go to garden centers and see what they have, but these are plants we sell as well. So this is typical of the stuff you can get from British garden centers. These are our own production. These are small mugo pines, several planted together. So we've got 2, 4, 6. And let's see how many I can do in the allotted time. So let us look at the mugo pines first. Now, these are mugo pines, and the variety called is mugo mops. And the description here on the label says that the growth each year is 5 to 10 centimeter. That means it doesn't grow more than 1 or 2 inches in 1 year. Now, looking at these trees, you don't have to be a rocket scientist, as they always say, to know that they already look like bonsai. I always remind people that in the 1960s, 70s, and even 1980s, when bonsai was just getting to become more popular in the UK, people simply put these in little bonsai pots and call them bonsai. But you can always improve it. They're so cute. They look very cute. And of course, most of these name varieties are grafted trees. So let's see what is going on under the pot. And as with all pines, look at the lovely mycelium there. All that white stuff is not disease, it is mycelium. But being a grafted tree, you can see the graft there. They're grafted, I think, onto ordinary Scots pine stock. And the graft is usually a bit ugly, but you can trim it back to make it look better and the graft will disappear. But that narrow part there could be inverse taper. You can, with a box cutter, cut there and help it to expand. So let's see what we do with these two trees. So I always scrape away to see what there is. And then I will enhance the shape by doing a bit of wiring. As I said, you don't have to, because already it's looking cute, but you can emphasize the beauty of this tree a little more. That means enhance the beauty by giving a bit of wiring. So can I bend the trunk? Yes, I can. So let me do something which I don't often do, which is use the double wire technique. Double wire technique, which is like this. Different people have different ways of doing double wire. They can immerse a double piece of wire there, but what I will do is go out there. I'm not bothering to cut that graft off because I might expose the cut too much, but let it grow bigger and then I will do it perhaps next year. So, in fact, by doing the double wire, I'm doing two branch principle. And two branch principle is absolutely essential if you want good, tidy, and neat wiring. Where you're going to wire up to there, we take some of the needles off so that it doesn't get trapped. Doesn't matter if it does get trapped, it will fall off. And then this other bit of wire, I will follow by going maybe, oh, this is where it gets difficult. I won't be able to go around in the same way. I may have to change my mind and do another piece of wire. So that didn't work. I should have inserted the two at the base there. Okay, I'll do this. I would remind you that all pines swell during the summer. That means the trunks get thick in the summer. So you have to watch the wire, especially in the summer. So I'm trying to create more of a bend on the trunk so it becomes even more artistic. Hence, you see, I use triple wire. Maybe that. So we're always talking of that S shape or the dancing girl shape. And then if we prop it up in a pot like that, so that's going to grow in its bonsai pot at that angle. We don't want too many twigs or branches coming from one point because that causes inverse taper. See, that's hanging downwards. I take off. Those needles I also take off. So that which we thought was the leader has become a side branch, and then we wire some of these. So using some bits of scrap wire. I'm not wrapping too tight, I'm just coiling the branch over the needles. It's just to guide the branch along. And I still think there are too many. So even on a little tree like that, I'm taking quite a bit off. And at the back you see, there's so many here, there are like 3, so I don't need all of them. I can take some of them out. Take some of these out. And this one probably I don't need that. So, and if I wanted to, I can wire those. So with very fine wire, I will probably just do one tiny bit of wire to do 2 branches. So there you are. So I've typical informal upright shape, like so. I will put it in a little bonsai training pot and I'll show you when I've done them all. So that is that one. Let me show you on this one. See, that's the graft. You see how ugly that graft is? So let's look at this one. You see there are lots of small shoots and they're like 2 main branches. So if those 2 branches, I can link this one with that one and see what happens. Some of these needles I can take off. Most of these specialist mugos, this one is called mugo mops, make very nice bonsai. Very slow growing. And they're hardier than the Japanese white pine in Europe. I find that the Japanese white pine is a difficult tree to look after, but they do need more care. But the European pines don't need so much care and attention. You will find that probably in the United States, all your different pines, like the jack pine or whatever, I don't know your pines, are probably much hardier than the imported Japanese pines. So as I say, you could have just left it like that, but I think by opening it out, you get more interesting shapes. So again, we will put a piece of wire to straddle this branch and that branch and see what happens. So I'm going to wire these 2 like so. There you go. So always make sure there's enough wire to go to the end of the branch you're wiring. A lot of people don't think of these little things when they wire. They go plunge deep into the thing and don't think of what you need to consider when you finish the wiring. So I'm trying to plan ahead to make sure I have enough wire to go to the end. And this one, make sure it goes enough to the tip. And I always extol the virtue of the gin pliers. Gin pliers is very useful for twisting wire when you come to the end of the wire, because the fingers will find it difficult to twist the end. I usually do like a little loop, and then when the wire is strong enough, it can do that. See, just opening it out has made a difference. There you are. So again, you can leave it bushy like this should you wish, but I think it could do with a bit of thinning. A bit too congested. Maybe that one to flatten the pad. These little shoots, don't need these. Take these off. I will leave that back one, so there you are. So we got two delightful little bonsai like that. From that, I will put them in pots, as I say, and show you the finished result. Okay, now this is also another mugo. This is the wild mugo. It's called the mugo mugus. And as I told you earlier, they're just seedlings put together. Now, what can you do with this, people will ask. Again, you just got to let your imagination run wild. What I would do is, I will probably make this into a clump style bonsai. Just by making a clump style, let's see what happens. So I'm going to wire two similar branches. These two are similar, these two are similar. So we wire these two together and these two together. And then hope for the best. Not hope for the best, I know what I'm doing. So we'll give it an interesting twist. So very conveniently, we've got two branches or two trunks to wire together. So again, make sure you have enough wire to go to that end and enough wire to go to this end. So this is what we call planning the length of wire you use. I don't like to cut lots of excess wire off because that is wasteful, blatantly wasteful. So I have anchored that, then I will go on to wire this one. Doesn't need to go right to the end. And this is 2 mil wire. I always emphasize that 2 mil is probably the most commonly used wire in bonsai for most situations. And then these two. These two I could go down to 1.5 if I wish. Yes, let's do 1.5. Enough wire to go to the end. So make sure that is enough for that. That's enough for that. Where you get these little stubby dead shoots, you can always clean it up. Makes the wiring easier. Okay, now that the wire is put on, we can just give it a twist and see what happens. Amazing what a little bit of twisting can do. As we say, it is movement. We are engaged in dance and movement, and we always like to think of these bonsai as like dancing movement, you see. The hands go that way, the branches go that way. I'm sure if you're into swimming, you will think of some analogy with the movement in swimming. So whatever you do has a relevance in bonsai as well. That one goes there. This one goes here. Branches should be flat. These will become branches in the end. When we do multiple trunks, we always try and repeat the same pattern. That makes for interesting design. Let me just, now these two can be wired together, these two branches, so we'll go from there to there. So the purpose of showing you all this is to emphasize that bonsai is certainly not rocket science. It is such a simple thing, and it can give you a lot of pleasure just by doing simple projects like this. Because most beginners in bonsai cannot spend endless hours carving and this and that. Start from somewhere which you can enjoy and manage easily, and then move on to the more difficult things. I've extended the wire to the top because I didn't have enough wire, so I can do another twist like that. And how about that one? That one is loose, so let me wire this and that together. So that is one branch that did not get wired. I will proceed to wire it. So again, because it's one branch on its own, I'm doing the proverbial two-branch principle by linking an existing wired branch, which is this. This is already wired, so I've taken the wire up there. So that serves as the second branch. And even a simple plant like this has a front and a back, so that's going to be like that. So when I pot this up, you will see it's like a multi-trunk tree. So that has become a little more interesting than what it started off life as, like so. So all these will go in pots afterwards. Now this is the famous Alberta spruce. I remember when I started doing these at the start of the pandemic, everyone laughed at me because they said, oh, Alberta spruce is never going to be useful for bonsai. But I proved them wrong, and now everyone, including these so-called great masters, are doing the same thing. So they've got lovely smell, lovely fragrance. So they can be bent if you wish. You can bend it into S, but you can also just make it a straight tree. I usually have several of these, wire the branches down, and I do a forest of these. So again, I take it out of the pot to see where the base is, because you'll be surprised what a lot of trunk there is still further down. There, see, these are such healthy plants, there's so much root. See, it goes right down there. Lots of lovely trunk there. Okay, so now I'm going to wire the top and show you how we can get a very nice S shape out of this. I will use, this is 3.5 mil wire. I'm being lazy because I know that if I use 3.5, I can probably just get away with one piece of wire and get a very respectable bend. If you put a double, it makes the bending easier. But if you can get away with one piece of wire, why not? This is one of our favorite species for doing workshops. much overlooked species, but they do make nice bonsai. Okay, so moment of truth. Let's see if it does bend it. You can get a gentle bend. Okay, it's not bending as much as I see. You've got to bend like that. If I want a more severe bend, I would put another piece of wire. Let's put another piece of wire, and then I can be sure that I can get a more severe artistic bend. There are certain things you can do in the summer, and potting on these conifers, as long as you don't cut too much root off, you can do it in the summer. With maples and other deciduous trees, you can't do the same sort of thing. You can't play around with the roots too much, but this is the beauty of conifers. They don't transpire that much, so you can tinker with the roots without them suffering. Okay, I put a double span. Let's see. That's much easier. So that's twisting action we've got. Now let me prot it. These little Japanese training pots are used for propping the tree up. So that's the angle I'm going to prop it up at. I can either use these lower branches, but I don't think I need these ones, because remember that when you make a bonsai, you need to show the trunk as much as possible. Once you begin to see the trunk, then they become more obvious or visible as bonsai. Now that low branch, I'm tempted to keep so I can thicken the trunk so it can act as a sacrificial. But if I want an instant bonsai, off it comes. There it goes. By the way, these piceas are propagated by cuttings. So this is the ideal thickness of cuttings. You can make a heel like that, and a heel cutting is like that. Stick them in the soil, and within 2 or 3 months, it will have rooted. So you can get new plants. These are how all these are propagated. Now this one, there's still too many. There are 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't need 4. I'll take 1 off and have 3 there. So that's going to be the first 3 branches there. And then I will find more branches there to wire. So that's how I approach this. So let's wire these 2 first. Anchor that, and then go on to this, and then wire the whole branch. Always provide an anchor to one side, and then proceed to the other one. Remember that the basic design of virtually all bonsai is triangular. Triangular or dome shape. So that's the base of the triangle. And the back branch, what happens when you have 3 branches? You can always link it to an existing wired branch, and you can get the wiring done that way. So don't throw up your hands and say, oh, I've got 3 branches, how can I wire 3 branches? You can still do that by linking to an existing branch. So I'll link to this existing branch here, and then taking it out to the back. So this is the back. No, this is the side, that's the back. And then I can bring the thing back like that, complete S shape. And then all these, we can clean the trunk up. Just try and find one single branch. And then wire the next pair. Always looking for pairs of branches to wire. So that one we will pair with, maybe not that one, I can pair it further up. Maybe that one. It's So I'm always following the path of the existing wire to go up the trunk. You don't have to wrap it that tight. Even if you just make an open coil to guide the branch along, it will take the shape like that. Don't wire it too tight. I'm just guiding that branch along. You see how delightful that shape is becoming. From dead straight, it's become like that. And should I not want the tree that tall, I could have cut it off there, but I will grow it taller. Wiring is a skill that comes with practice. The more you practice, the better you get at it. The thing is to keep it neat. What I'm trying to emphasize is that you need to visualize the shape. Not many people are able to do it when they start off in bonsai, but I always say the more you work on bonsai, the more you will understand how designs are created. You have to visualize the shape. So I will not spend too much time. All these little ones I will wire and I will pot them up. So when I've potted them all up, I will show you what they look like. So from a straight tree, I've turned into this. And then what about these hinokis? They are very popular because people like the foliage. You see, they've got this very dense sort of foliage. So unlike other chamaecyparis. So again, I'm trying to find a trunk. There is, in fact, a visible trunk. These are all cuttings. They're about 3-year-old cuttings. And as long as you can show the trunk, you will have a visible bonsai. See, just by doing that, I've made it look more like a bonsai. Even without watering, we put it in a pot and see what happens. This is exactly what I'm going to do. So that's what I'm going to do. Maybe let's try one piece of wire and see what happens. Nothing lost. Again, I'm using very thin wire. This is 1.5 mil wire. These trees, again, they grow only like at most 5 or 10 centimeter in a year. Very slow growing trees. And when you make it as a bonsai, they are even slower. So when we put it in a bonsai pot, you will see the difference a pot makes. So can you see the shape? I've separated the branches so you can see structure. I can even wire those out like that. So that's that little one. So as I said, these are just simple projects, but very satisfying. This is just a larger version of the same thing. There's a slug in there. So can you see? We will just thin that and show you what that should look like. This is another 2 years older than that. Just shows how slowly they grow. If you want to make this a bigger plant, then don't put it in a bonsai pot. Continue growing it in these large flower pots, and then the trunk will thicken, the tree will get taller, but meanwhile you will have made the shape. And if you want to make cuttings, this is ideal cutting material, like so. So you can see the shape in there. I will thin it a little more, and then I will pot it up and show you what happens with this. So the next stage is I will pot them and then I will show you what they look like finally. So that is the first stage of doing all these trees. There you go. So let me show you where I've got to with this little Mugo pine. I've done some very basic wiring, as you can see, and I've given it a more S shape, but there's still too many branches on the third level. So this level here, those seem to be unnecessary. So I'm holding the camera and I'm working at the same time. So I will cut that off. You see, I don't want it shooting upwards. This also, I don't think somehow it's necessary. So let me, with one hand holding the camera, the other hand holding the scissors, cut this one off. So you can see the effect I'm getting. Now these I'm going to wire so I can get it more flat. So I've got to wire these little ones. So let me show you the final effect. Just very loose wiring to shape the tree, and then hopefully after about a year I can take the wires off and the branches and trunk will stay in that position. So looking at it from all different angles, from the top, the side, and this is how we wire to shape it. So this is just for shaping, it's not for exhibiting or anything. So this is how we create the basic shape of the tree. So here we are, the two Mugo pines look like this after a bit of wiring. One's in the blue pot, as I said. You don't have to always follow the convention and have them in unglazed pots. I've deliberately put them, one in a blue pot, one in a cream colored pot. So as long as you like it, that's what matters. So those are the two Mugos, the final outcome. Now let's look at the other trees that I've done. So I have one more project to complete. I've done those two Mugos, a Picea, and then that small Hinoki, and then this slightly larger Hinoki, which was in a 1 liter pot. So this is a much larger tree. So what do? I go into the trunk and see if there is a visible trunk, and I will try and expose the trunk, reduce the root ball, find usable branches, remove a fair bit of the foliage, and try and get a triangular shape with visible branches. So that is my approach to making it. You see how clean the lines are on that one. So I've got to transform this bush into something that looks like a tree. So I very quickly made a small Hinoki, and this is a larger one. They're very slow growing, the Hinokis. They only grow like at most an inch a year. So to get a big plant from a cutting takes a long time. So these would be at least, I would say, 4 years old from cuttings. We have grafted trees, but the grafts are usually very ugly. So I prefer trees which are made from cuttings. So you can already see by parting away the soil, the trunk is very visible. There are visible branches, but it's a bit bushy or hairy. So let's reduce the foliage a little bit. So remember with bonsai, less is more, the general principle of less is more. So you got to judiciously prune away so that you get more view of the trunk. Can you see, just by doing that, I've introduced a space between the branches. That's what I took off from there. And these can all be made into cuttings. Okay, so over there, I will also prune this one. And where it is a bit long and lumpy, I will take some of that out. Hinokis are very difficult species to maintain and to prune. So, but with everything, the more you do, the more you practice, the better you get at it. So that is the next branch. I won't have to remove many branches. It's just creating a shape. And I know that wiring does help, but there are instances where you don't even have to wire. And let's see where we get simply by pruning. You can see the shape. It's such a lovely shape simply from pruning it. I will put some more because it does define the shape even more. So I need to take it that side, so that will require some wiring. So this is how I think as I go along. And the top, if I can create a space. This is where these fine scissors are so useful. See, so simply by pruning, I've got a very credible shape. So all I need is to wire this to this side so that I can see the trunk better. So again, I emphasize that we do this virtually throughout the summer, and because they're conifers, they don't transpire that much, so I can tinker with the roots a little bit. I'm not doing radical or drastic root pruning. I'm just very gently pruning it. Let me just see if I got the right grade of wire. Using the right grade of wire is very important. So this is 1 mil. So I'm just going to wire this branch. So I anchor it to something there. So that hopefully can take the branch that way. So that's all I've done. I've not put more wires than needed. Judging how much to prune is a matter of taste, but don't scalp it so that you end up with nothing. You must have something left. So that's all I would do. One piece of wire, I've created that shape. Isn't it nice? So it certainly looks like a tree. So that's the small version, and that's a slightly larger version. So I'll now just put it in a pot, and then I will show you the end result of all of them. So this is so simple. And you see, it's got such a lot of root that I can afford to play with it and not suffer at all. If a tree doesn't have much root, then that's not a good sign. Then the tree could be stressed. Okay, so we stop for a while and I'll put it in a pot and show you what it looks like in a pot. Let me talk about the choice of pot. Here we are in a rather difficult situation because it's not going to be an exhibition or show tree. Ideally, this tree would be nice in this size pot. You see the proportions are so nice like that. And rule of thumb is that it's about 70% of the longest dimension of the tree. So that would fit very nicely. But if I were to squeeze that root ball in this pot, it may stress the tree too much. I would have to cut all of that off. And that means I would be cutting about certainly 30% off the root. So I probably shouldn't use that. I could probably try using this one. Don't forget, I'm not putting it in an exhibition. I'm just putting it on to grow strong. And maybe next spring, I will put it into the smaller pot. So I could have put it in that. That's very nice looking. That's a mica pot. But then I think for the health of the tree, I think something deeper might be more appropriate. I know that's too big for the tree, but for the sake of the health of the tree, I feel I should use a much larger pot. So you see, I am not cutting root, I'm just teasing the root a little bit. There's so much soil left still. Even that is only just fitting. Okay, so that would fit. So let me just put a piece of wire to tie it in. Just to remind you guys, tying the tree in is always a safe option. In the olden days, going back 40 or more years, no one ever bothered tying the trees in, but for our purposes, I think it's wiser to tie the tree in. You notice that I'm not cutting any root at all. All the roots I've cut off is that. And I'm going to use the same compost again. And because it was growing in this type of ordinary garden compost, I think this is going to be quite good for the tree. All this very gritty mix may not be good for hinokis. You've got to play it by ear. Experience will tell you what works and what doesn't work. So all these extra hairy roots at the end I will take off. And as long as I keep it moist now, it should be okay. So this is the sort of material you can easily access in garden centers and nurseries. But you got to know what to look for. Just the other day I had someone come on a class and they bought some junipers, but they were all these very prickly junipers, unsuitable. So although juniper is such a big species, there are not many varieties that lend themselves to making bonsai. So if you choose the right variety, you're halfway there. So there you are. That's not too bad, although it's not the ideal pot. So I'm now going to take one final shot of the before and after of the trees. So this is the mugo pine that I made from material like this, from this to this. So that is one example. Now let me show you the next ones were these little mugo pines. I in fact did 2 of them. And that material is produced from something like that. So that is the before and this is the after. So that is that. And then this, the famous Picea or Christmas tree, Alberta spruce. So this is the before and this is the after. So much for that. And then we did 2 hinokis. This was produced from this sort of material. And then the bigger one, which is this, was produced from this big material like that. So you can see from something which doesn't really look like bonsai, you can convert them into bonsai very easily and very simply. So I hope you enjoyed this video.